NBA Jam. NBA Jam is 25 years old this year. It is hard to believe that the game is a quarter of a century old. Um, I have had a relationship with NBA Jam dating all the way back to 1993 when I played the game for the first time. When I played the game for the first time, I played it in an arcade, or it really was an arcade in Worcester, Massachusetts, that was right near City Hall. The arcade was across the street from City Hall. Inside that arcade, there was Street Fighter 2, and there were some other games. But the game that got my attention was a game with the volume all the way up, and there was this crazy announcer that was making all these crazy calls. It sounded exciting, and I needed to know what it was. Basketball has never really been my thing, but still, the volume and the sound effects kind of called me over. So I went and I looked, and I'm watching these two guys play the game, and it's crazy what I'm seeing. It's two players versus two players. I'm seeing dunks where they're doing somersaults in the air, and they're hanging on the rim, and they're blocking shots that are like 30 feet in the air. And it was so over the top and so adrenaline fueled that it captured my interest. I could not walk away. So I waited for the game to end, and I put my tokens on the machine, and it turns out that it was $2 to play a full game. So I put my $2 in. I didn't know what to expect, and I began to play. And I figured out the controls reasonably quickly. I fell behind by 5 or 6 points at one point, and then I made a couple of threes and would tie it up. And it was very seesaw. And the game went to the fourth quarter, and you know how this runs. There are two things that happen in the fourth quarter when you're talking about an NBA Jam game. The first is the team that's in the lead, if they execute a dunk, they're probably going to shatter the backboard. And I'll tell you, the first time I saw that, I wanted to pump my fist. I wanted to shout, yeah, because that was so cool, seeing all the shards of glass and hearing Tim Kitzrow's reaction while it's happening. And oh my, it's crazy. And the second thing that you'll remember about the fourth quarter is no game is ever over because of the rubber band artificial intelligence. You can be down by 10, and all of a sudden, the team that was ahead can't make a shot to save their lives. They bounce dunks, they miss any kind of jumper, and meanwhile, you can bury anything within a half a court. So you can make the games close, and that's what happened. So I was down 2. There were like 3 seconds left to go in the game. I take the ball out, I get it to half court, I throw up a prayer, and of course, it goes in. I beat the guy, and I was in love with the game at that point. Being able to come back from points down and being able to come back with just 3 seconds left to go, it really gets the blood pumping, it really gets the energy moving, and from then on, I knew that I was going to be playing NBA Jam wherever I saw it, and that's exactly what I did. When I saw the game in arcades, I would pump quarters or tokens into it. And then when I found out that a home version was coming, yeah, forget it. I knew that I was getting that game right away. So this is the version that I got first. This is NBA Jam for the Sega Genesis in 1994. It was released, I believe, in early March of 1994. While I don't remember the date off the top of my head, I do remember what the weather conditions were like that day, and it was bad. We were having a snowstorm that day, and I wasn't really going to drive anywhere because the roads were bad, but the game was coming in. I knew that I was within reasonable walking distance of the place where I pre-ordered the game from. So I put on my jacket, I put on my Walkman, I put on my snow boots, and I set out. I walked to the mall and back on foot to get this game. I had cold feet, I was freezing, I had snow all over my face. I probably narrowly missed getting hit by a car once or twice on my way. It was totally worth it because when I got back home, I trudged back upstairs to my bedroom. I popped this into my Genesis, and for the rest of the day, it didn't matter if it was the same game, but I was playing different teams. I was all over this game, and I had the time of my life. This game, just like the arcade, had sound bites from Tim Kitzrow calling commentary. You could shatter the backboard. This game had battery backup, so you didn't have to write down passwords. There were secret codes. There were secret players. It was everything that you could want with the necessary, with the necessary give and take to make this happen on a home console. And I was very happy with it. This is still, if you ask me, my favorite game in the series. NBA Hang Time, we'll get to that in a minute, is probably second. But this game, to me, because it's the first, because it set so many trends, it set the benchmark, it was a lot of fun to play, and it's still the only arcade game that I would want in my house. If I could only have one, that's the one that I would want. So when you have a successful game like NBA Jam, of course you're going to get a sequel, or you're going to get something new based on it. And what we got first in arcades and then at home was NBA Jam Tournament Edition, or TE. This implemented a few new statistics. It implemented new players on the roster, but it's still more the same. A lot of fun to play. Now, the Genesis and the Super Nintendo versions of this game were made a lot closer because both now had battery backup rather than just the Genesis version. But unfortunately for NBA Jam TE, and thank you NBA, there was no longer any shattering of any backboards, which was a little bit of a letdown. But even new things like the injury stat really didn't count that much, at least in terms of the Genesis and Super Nintendo versions of the game. Unfortunately, by the time we got to the PlayStation port, this was released on September 9th of 1995, and it was one of the first two PlayStation games I got along with Ridge Racer. Once we got here, unfortunately, the injury stat counted for a lot more. The way to win this game is just to push the other players down as much as you can and spam their injury stat until they are basically slow as molasses on the court. Then you can just walk around them and score at will. That is not the way the game should be played. Unfortunately, it was an Acclaim decision. It wasn't Midway's decision. By this point, Acclaim had purchased the gameplay engine and the license from Midway, so they were doing NBA Jam, and Midway really wasn't, although Midway's name is on here. Like I said, this was one of the first two games I got for my PlayStation, and I went back and forth between this and Ridge Racer for like weeks, and I was okay with that. The cool thing about the PlayStation version is even though there are some things that I think that are off versus the arcade or even the Super Nintendo and Genesis versions, visually this looks as close to the arcade as you're going to get, and I definitely welcome that. So as I mentioned, NBA Jam went away. Acclaim got that license, brought out a game called NBA Jam Extreme, which I'm not going to show you on camera because the game is terrible. And they had to do something new. So Mark Turmel and his friends went back to work, and they came out with a game for arcades first, and then for home consoles called NBA Hang Time. This is my favorite Nintendo 64 game. Not Zelda Ocarina of Time, not Super Mario 64, not even NFL Blitz, which I'm a big fan of. It's this guy right here because it is so close to Arcade Perfect. It's so very close to Arcade Perfect, and it is definitely worth owning. Was just playing this with my buddy Sam when I visited him a couple of weeks ago. We had a great time playing a couple of games of this, keeping the games very close. More animations, a different announcer. Unfortunately, Tim Kitzrow is not here, which is the only thing that's really missing. Tim's voice is sadly missed here. But the music is there, the gameplay is there, the secrets are there, the tricks are there, and it's just a lot of fun to play through. And if you don't have this for your N64, I do strongly recommend it. I say this every time, but I really do mean it. It's that good. When I got this for my N64 back in 1996 or 97, I forget which, I know it was pretty early in the system's lifespan, but I played this game for weeks, and I always went back to it, even after beating all of the teams, just to play against the secret teams, to try and increase my standings on the high score leaderboards, and it was worth it. It was awesome. So then in arcades, after Hang Time and after NFL Blitz had come out, there was a new NBA game that had come out, and it's called NBA Showtime NBA on NBC. And yes, that is Shaq on the cover doing his thing. By this point, the Dreamcast was a thing. This game, I believe, came out in 2000. It didn't come out right at launch for the Dreamcast, but it was totally worth the wait. It plays very closely to the arcade game. Again, looks just like Blitz in terms of graphics. The players are well animated. The animation moves at 60 frames per second, so it's very smooth on the Dreamcast. Looks very good. Different courts, secret players, stat tracking, you name it, it's there. This is the version of the game to own. So if you have a Dreamcast, I recommend this and NFL Blitz 2000, and we'll get to that in a future episode of Unsealed. But this Just absolutely fantastic. When this game came out again, it took up hours and hours of my time because I needed to beat all the teams. And this is a lot harder because fouls are implemented here. So you can't just push people down to steal the ball. You have to either make a legit steal or you have to push them down at certain times of the quarter, and you can accumulate X amount of fouls before the team goes to the free throw line. Only one free throw, but it's 3 points, and they maintain possession, so you really don't want to do that too much because it can turn the tide of a game. I could talk about this one on and on, but I won't do that. There's one more game I want to get to. I just covered this in an unsealed episode. It's a game that I played a little bit when it came out. I want to play more of it now that I have a new copy. This is NBA Ballers, and this is much different from Jam, Hang Time, and Showtime because now we're talking about one-on-one play. And we're talking about street ball. We're not talking necessarily about your typical NBA basketball game with a lot of high-flying action. There's definitely action to be had here, but it's one-on-one. There's a lot of trick plays or ankle-breaking plays to try and throw teammates or defenders off balance. And I think that it's a worthy investment to make for this system. It is different. It focuses on the glitz and glamour of being an NBA player. There is a story mode for the first time in a Midway sports game, which is definitely worth playing. And near and dear to my heart, this game has representation of the Basketball Hall of Fame, which is just 10 minutes down the road from where I live. I do need to get back there at some point to check it out. So Midway basketball games have been a part of my life now for 25 years, starting in the arcade, playing NBA Jam, spending a ton of tokens or a ton of quarters whenever I possibly could. I would always use Mark Turmel's initials, MJT, March 22nd. Once I found out about that secret player, that's the one I honed in on because he was the guy that was at the forefront. He was the guy that really got the arcade sports movement going. And without him, who knows where we would be. And every so often, he comes back and he'll make games or he'll collaborate with revivals of certain games. He had a lot to do with the NBA Jam revival, first for the Wii and then for the Xbox 360 and the PS3. And if you haven't played NBA Jam On Fire Edition for the Xbox 360, PS3, or Xbox One, you're missing out because the game is absolutely fantastic. And Tim Kitzrow making his triumphant return to the microphone for an NBA Jam game is not to be missed. There are some great lines delivered by him in there. I'm looking forward to meeting Tim, Sal, and some other Midway folks at Retro World Expo 2018 this weekend in Hartford, Connecticut at the Connecticut Convention Center. I will be there from time to time doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes as I'm working social media for the event, but I will hope to meet them and maybe even you at the show. Thanks as always for watching my work here on YouTube. This has been another episode of RePete. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll do another one again really soon, but until the next time, my friends, take care of yourselves. See you later.